you everyone for joining us for another week of In Rhythm's Lightning Talks. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jen Crawford. Thank you for joining us this week. In Rhythm's Lightning Talks, they happen 5:15 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. It is a place where our practice area consultants teach back to the In Rhythm community at large, as well as with some friends on LinkedIn, and then further down the road on YouTube. This week, I have the pleasure of co-hosting this space with Kaan Caliskan, and he is going to go over Vue.js by building a crypto tracker app. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Jen. And hi, everybody. Thanks for attending. And so today we are going to do introduction for Vue.js, one of the hottest front-end framework right now. And so React and Vue.js is now leading the front-end space. And so Svelte is coming other than, and there's Angular. And today we are going to, especially, I'm coming originally from the React background. I currently work at MasterCard as a front-end engineer. And at eTrade previously, I work on the React.js applications. After the switching to MasterCard, I started to use with my team Vue.js. So as a React.js developer, it was kind of a topic for me to search. So how to switch from React and what's the differences. So today I want to talk about, we are going to especially build the application, and we will do that in 25 minutes. It's kind of a challenge for us. But I thought that instead of showing some slideshows, if we are going to build a simple app with the core features, it will be helpful. So even either you use React.js or any framework, or you just do plain JavaScript and HTML. And with this, our application, you are going to be able to understand the core functionality for the Vue.js. So let me go to the other page. Actually, before the deep dive into the Vue.js, I would like to talk about SPA. So SPA stands for Single Page Applications. Last 5 years, it became more popular, more than ever for the front-end applications. Now it's kind of a standard for the front-end community. In the old school days, we had our HTML pages, and then that pages deployed to server side. And then when we make the GET or POST request, for each page, we get a result. But with the single page applications, this practice changed. So how it's changed, we started to use in the front-end community tools like Webpack or Vite. And so your front-end application became one single JavaScript file, and you just deploy it to your server side. Each time, you don't have to render different HTML pages, or for example, Django, you have your templates, same for Ruby, same for Java. For single page applications, you have one JavaScript file, and it determines that which part of the application will show in the screen. You define your path, and then your users simultaneously see there is no GET or POST request. There is no loading. They just see the screen. And this general structure called single page applications. Unfortunately, it's one big disadvantage that since your application get bundled to one single JavaScript file, you lose many great points for SEO, search engine optimization. But for that reason, there is another libraries called Next.js or Nux.js, Next for React, Nux for Vue.js. So if you want get some traction from search engine optimization, so we can able to use that additional plugins and libraries to make our single page app for server-side rendering. So we can get some organic traffic. Our different pages can be listed on the search engines. For the Vue.js, for today's topic, it's creator Ivan Yu. So originally he was working at the Google. So he was part of the Google X, and he needs to present each week a project while working at the Google. So for his needs, he created a project, and then that project became bigger and bigger. today on the GitHub, it's totally open source. It almost has 200,000 stars. Now even full-time work on the Vue.js with the other core team members. So thanks to their effort as an open source, we can use that as a great library like React team. Also, it's open source. It has great developers too. And in the background, Vue.js uses model view model structure. It's a common pattern for class-based applications, actually. And when I'm going to build the application, I will explain the general some things common with the React.js and Vue.js. So we have the same structure with the React.js. If you are newer to front-end applications with React, Vue, or Angular, some of the keywords sounds unfamiliar, but no worries. When you get used to that keywords like props and components or views, all frameworks commonly use these keywords. So when you learn them once, when you switch back to other applications, they refer to totally same thing. So switching between the components is easy, and their structure generally is same, but there's some fundamental changes while you're writing code. And today we are going to, this is the one sample of our application. I will start a video actually, because we have limited time, like 25 minutes. I pre-recorded my video, and with that video, I explain everything from scratch to end of this page. After this application done in 25 minutes, I will take questions. We can discuss about Vue.js. I believe that it will be helpful for everybody as an introduction to front-end frameworks, SPA applications, and Vue.js especially. So I'm going to start my video. Let's see.
The crypto tracker app by using real-time cryptocurrency data provided by Nomics. It provides detailed cryptocurrencies market data.
So first of all, I'm going to use a real-time database. So our request not predefined, it will be real-time. So I'm using an API called Nomics. It's totally free for personal use. So we will do real-time Axios request to get our data and render the page. So it will be close to the real-life experience with this application.
Going to list the most popular cryptocurrencies by price, market cap, and name. Let's start with our application. I open my terminal. We can build Vue.js applications by our terminal by installing Vue CLI. You can either install CLI to globally by npm or yarn. And since I already have Vue CLI, I'm going to directly start my project. Terminal, I say Vue create, and then my project name is Crypto Tracker, and I hit enter. And then it asks me the default version 2, default settings with version 3. We are going to use version 2. Actually, we can go with version 3 as well, but version 3 has a newest feature called Composition API. I want to keep that topic in one of the next Lightning talks. I'm going to use Vue version 2, but if you choose version 3, you can simply following this application and you won't get any error. Text is same, function name same. Vue 3 provides better TypeScript support, much faster, and also the composition API. Let's choose manually select feature.
So I want to hold here. Vue CLI is pretty same with the create React app. So React has their own thing to starting app, but for Vue.js, when you create React app with create React app tool, if you want to customize some things if you want to switch from Babel to another one or some ESLint configurations, you need to eject your application. So there is no turn back. If you want to build enterprise level, some high level applications with the create React app, so many people doesn't suggest that, because in the future you might come across with problem and you might do big refactoring. But for Vue.js, it's same tool, but when you choose yourself, for example, here we can choose Babel or another CSS preprocessor, we can customize it without having like tech debt in the future. So one big advantage for the Vue CLI, there is no afraid, you can customize it in the future. You won't have any issues.
Maybe you can customize it here. I just want to show, and you can add CSS preprocessor, Vue extruder. We will include them, but manually, actually not here. Choose version 2, and then ESLint. You can choose Airbnb config, prettier. I'm going with prevention only. Lint on save. In package.json, no. Vue.js application creating our app like create React app application, but the biggest advantage of the Vue CLI is that the boilerplate is ready to customize. In the create React app, you need to eject pre-built create React applications, and then you might get some trouble in the enterprise level applications. People choose to build from scratch, but in the Vue side, you can use Vue CLI directly, and then you can customize it whatever you want. I'm opening my, so just crypto tracker, and then directly I open my code editor source folder. Since we are building from scratch,
if you are familiar with some React, also it comes with source folder and public folder. Until this part, it's totally the same. And you can keep this source folder, but I just want to show it from scratch with everything. So this is the main reason I deleted the source folder here, but you can just continue with the source folder and edit this file. That's totally okay.
I directly remove the source folder. Source folder basically where we want to put all of our components and files related to our application. And then first I'm going to start with main.js file. We will tell our application that we're going to use a Vue by scratch. You can also use the pre-built ones when you use the Vue CLI, but since we are doing from the scratch, I want to show how we can do it. I created a new Vue instance and then just render to app play.
We are going to create this instance once. Since we are using single page applications, this one instance creation will be enough. So after creating this Vue instance, here in the main.js file, we are ready to go. All of the other Vue files and JavaScript files will know that we are using Vue.js, and we can import Vue.js functionality, and there's a predefined some advantage directly.
In a second, what's all of this mean? Create our, not folder, our core application, core components, excuse me, and called app.vue. And then inside of it, everything here, basically Vue template, can customize it, get our data, and then here we need root div for each component. Go to script, yeah. And then we need to define here default name app. Okay.
So here we basically created our first Vue component. Between the code template text, it's pure HTML. When we write the script, that part is we use the Vue.js functionality actually. When we mention, I will show in the upcoming minutes of the video. When we define some functions or variables inside of the export default, we can directly access that value inside of the template. So Vue.js in the React side, you write your JavaScript inside of the HTML, and this one of the slogans of the React. They mentioned that it's JavaScript in HTML, and then you return that JavaScript. It becomes the HTML file at the end of the day when you create the build. In Vue.js, you have this template like old school HTML file. You create your script tag. Again, it's like old school script tag. As we know, front-end developers, you write your JavaScript file, and then they communicate with each other. Since we created the Vue.js instance in the main.js, after that point, we can able to use all of the functionality like normal HTML page. On top of it, Vue.js.
And then Since Vue.js is a single page application, we have public folder. Everything at the end of the day will be built under this div, ID app. The main.js file, we basically creating a new Vue instance, tell that, okay, get the app.
Oops. Of course, there's some problem. I'm going to restart the video where we left.
Crypto tracker app by
Sorry about
first
that.
I'm going to start with the app.vue. I'm just copy pasting it. We'll customize it. Sure. Since Vue.js is a single page application, we have public folder. So everything at the end of the day will be built under this div, ID app. So in the main.js file, we basically creating a new Vue instance and tell that, okay, get the element ID by app, name app, like here, and then put this app component under it. So this is the biggest technical structure of the single page applications. So,
sorry again. Yes.
The crypto tracker app, we basically creating a new Vue instance in Yarn Sir, since we have kind of time limit. Go fast. We see hello world. For this design, I'm going to use serialize UI and index.html. I'm just simply adding it. When I refresh the page, you can see our font a little bit change. And then let's go with actually our first component. Going to create components folder and then header.vue. I want to show a header like this. And for this, I'm going to create a header. For the HTML part, to make things fast, I'm going to use pre-built navigation. Here, our component name is header. And then I want to use this navigation. Looking great. And app.vue file, since this is our root component for the application, I'm going to import header. Because basically right now we are showing the hello world from the app.vue component. And when we import a component, we need to declare it under the components object. This is coming from the Vue.js.
So each component, we define the name app. And then when we import some header, so Vue.js understand that, okay, we imported header, and also that component's name is header.
It must be named components. And then I just mention header here, and let's go back our application, and we see our menu. Since Materialize UI used the grid system, I'm just doing one little change and call this class container. And then let's go to header and say crypto tracker. Yep, great. Let's remove this SAS instead of portfolio. Latest listings. Great. We have this menu. Now I am going to create our first view. I will explain the difference between components and view. The views has their own path. So home.view. Let's come back here. Home. I want to see my home component when we visit the main page, means the slash. For that reason, we are going to install some packages. I'm going to install first yarn add Axios, Vuex, Vue router, and QS. Okay, they are ready to use. And yarn serve again. Let's create our component because we want to see home page under the component under the slash. Okay, for the router, we have to do some settings first.
Vue.js also has an a package called Vue Router, and Vue Router does the same job with React Router. Also, React has components, package for called React Router. When we want to target specific path, since we mentioned that this is a single page applications, at the end of the day, we will have one single JavaScript file. So how we can define path for each of the different pages? For example, if you want to have /portfolio, /profile, or /account, and we need to tell our application that, okay, when user visit this path, for example, /home or /profile, you need to show this component, and that component we put some HTML, we make some business logic, we get some data and render it with the mapping in the component. With that functionality, with React Router or Vue Router, we can able to define custom path for our specific components.
We need to import Vue from Vue. We import Vue Router. Yes, that's we want. And we want to import home. We will customize path specific for the home. Since we created Vue instance, new Vue, we can directly get that instance since this is a single page application, and then we say that, okay, use Vue Router. And then for the routes, it's array. That array takes an object, different objects for different paths. Since we want to get a / the main page, I'm just put a / and then this path name is home. We can give it any name actually. The most important part after the path is component. So we want to show home component. Okay, we need to export these routes, tell them the Vue.js that, okay, get know each other, basically. History. These are the basic settings. Base URL is important if you are using a proxy. Routes and export default router.
And here we created routes. Routes basically simple JavaScript array, and that array takes objects. And that objects we have properties, path, name, and component. Their name predefined, so we can change. We can say path2 or my path, something like that. We must use path, name, and component. After the importing Vue Router package here, we basically give our routes array inside of the Vue Router because we are extending Vue Router class with a new keyword, and then we will export it and include the main.js file.
Mode history is very important because we want to see the page without hash. Normally, if we create the latest listings, it will always hash, but we want to use history mode. We want to define path like without specific symbol. Actually, that's the base settings. We basically tell Vue that use the Vue Router, and then we create a new Vue Router settings and put our routes inside of it. We need to declare this to the Vue.js, and the final settings that we come to the main page and say router from router, and then we need to just get like this. Since we define our routes, what we want to do actually come to the root component app and then define router view.
We declare here router view because imagine that in the future when we have different 60 path for enterprise level, there is hundreds of different pages. If you want to import each of the pages here, so profile, account, it's hard to manage. And also we need to give specific path here. It becomes like a spaghetti code. But for that reason, Vue Router has one specific defined function, and we can say component. It's called router view. When we declare or create a new routes under the router folder here, index.js, it's just needed to be import router view, and then Vue application automatically understand that, okay, so this developer created paths, and these are the components. So I'm going to show these components for the related paths in the browser.
We want to do this because we don't want to include.
Why we didn't include header inside of the router? Because we want to show header for all of the page. It doesn't matter profile, a sign out, login, account settings, or by page. We want to show our header for all of the pages. For that reason, we import our header here and put our root root component. So header is like a static. It never changed. We have header. But for router view, we put because we want to show different components, different pages for different paths.
Home here or any other components, because it will be hard to maintain, and also how we can define custom paths each of them if we have 60 components. For that reason, we use router view. This comes from the router, and then it checks this path for each defined route. And then when we come back to the app, we see home component. Okay, great. The next step is that we are going to create a center store for our application. Under the store, modules, index.js, crypto.js. This is for equivalent of, we can say that equivalent of Redux.
So I just want to stop here again and just want to simply explain what is the state management in the front end. If you first time hear it, it might be sounds complicated, but we can think our front end application, our HTML, JavaScript as a shopping mall. For the shopping mall, there's different kind of stores and there's a kind of different transactions. Each store, some stores sell bikes, others jewelry, other food. It likes our components. Each component has its own function. Profile, account settings, or buy, sell crypto. Each has keep different value. When we want to share some value, for example, we manage the shopping mall, we want to tell the food store that, okay, you know what? There is Nike sold 1,000 shoes. And then if you want to share this Nike information with the food cart in the shopping mall, we use some central information center and like a reception. So this state management help us to share data between components, because sometimes our header needs our username value, and sometimes our profile needs username information. So the sharing data between the components, we can use state management tools. For the React, it's called Redux. It's super popular, or Mobex. Both of them is popular. For the Vue.js community, so we have Vue.x, and it helps us to do state management.
Redux and Mobex. If you are familiar with Redux or Mobex, the Vue.x, we are going to create one general state management structure. We have state. I'm going to get everything empty for now. Actions, const mutations, for default. Router, we need to also set up the store. It's similar to router. So I'm going to also import crypto. Crypto, so we can name it anything. I name it crypto because it will handle the cryptocurrencies related values. But if you have like users, we can create also another one called users or profile. Or if you have like marketplace for gold and cryptos, we can create another one for just specifically gold transactions and information. I did that. I told Vue that use the Vue.x, and also I created a new Vue.x instance by extending the class and put my central crypto bank state into it.
Here, just simply state, also we will declare our state, but just as an overview, getters mean that when I need a data, and then I ask the getters. But if I want to update the data, like add this user to this array or add this transaction to transaction table, we use actions and mutations. We must not directly mutate the state. It is one of the gold rules. And for that reason, we created here 4 different objects. At first, it might be so confusing because we have like 4 different things: state, getters, actions, and mutations. But at the end of the day, state just keeps our information, and that's all. For the rich that information between our components, we use getters. And if you want to update data in the state, we use actions and mutations. And all of them comes with the functionality Vue.js, and all of the names are predefined. It's really simple to use.
And also under the main.js, same as router, we need to import the store from the actually store. And when we give it to the Vue, it's just understand the crypto and its actions getters. We will mention this actions and getters. I'm going to create a constant file, my constants. For the constant file that I want to make it a little bit more to real life example. So we just put our API endpoint, our API key, and constant file. So for that reason, you don't have to create a constant file, but it's a common practice with some professional apps to separate the constant, never change values. And for them, we are creating a specific file to get those values. Put my API related constant values like root URL, API key, and some other thing, a filter like active. We need to get only not that cryptocurrencies, only active ones. I put all of this information under the constant to make structures or enterprise level and more readable. And also I will create a folder called API, and this API folder I will manage my API related operations. Here I put API related function under the API folder crypto.js. I called it crypto because in the future, if we have users profile, we can create another file for the operations. I'm using Axios package to make the API request. I named the function as fetch cryptocurrency data. I'm giving my crypto API key and also new key.
So since we created constant file, we don't have to declare our API key or our URL in every single page. We can import those constant values from this file. That was our main reason to create that file. And also here, we simply use Axios package. Axios is a JavaScript package to make get or some post request or an other request.
Active key, creating a string, because this Nomics API wants us create a query string like this to get the data. QS package we installed takes care of it, and I just use my query string as an object, and then it's stringified and take care of it while making the request. And then next, we are going to work on our actions state. First of all, I define crypto data as an empty array initial, and also show loading is false, true, and getters, crypto values. I will explain each of these function and why we need them, how we can use them while making them. So fetch cryptocurrencies. Defined are some default actions and mutations and getters for the fetching using cryptocurrencies. Actions, we can't directly mutate this our global state. We create actions and mutations for that. Fetch cryptocurrencies function inside of the actions actually run our API function to get the values. And then when we get the data, we can't directly mutate the data. We can't say state.crypto data like this equal to data. Instead of that, we create mutations. This commit comes from the default Vuex. So when we create the actions here, the first argument is an object, and that object has an property named called commit. And second, we can give, if we use this function, since I will show also how we can use these actions outside of this store. When we create the commit, the mutation name and commit name must be the same. We are seeing set cryptocurrency values and setting data. When we create the mutation, set cryptocurrency values, it gets state as a first argument. It must be state. It's a predefined, but the second or third argument is what we send from here. We send data we get from the API. We are setting, since we get the data, we don't need to show loading screen. We set the set show loading false. We created another rotation for it too. In home.view file, we can start to work on that.
Once a final comment about why we need a general state manager, because we will have different 50, 60 pages. And if I change show loading value inside of the home component homepage to true, but if we make this change inside of this component, how my other pages will know this change? When I change, okay, show loading true, but my profile component doesn't know I changed my show loading value. So for that reason, we keep our general information in one central store. We can call it central store, central information bank also. And then all of the other components get the information from the same place. So there's not asynchronous, but synchronous information flows, goes through our applications.
We want to use our Vuex store. I'm going to import map actions, map getters from Vuex. This methods object is default, comes with the Vuex. In this object, we can create component level functions. For example, if you want to say like change name here, and then I can get this function directly inside of this template. Like when I say change name, it knows that I refer to this change name and then use it. Can remove this. Let's split the screen, and then we are in the home, and let's open our crypto module. We called our actions fetch cryptocurrencies. I use this inside of the methods, because in methods we define the functions. And in computed object, if you want to get data, if you want to memoization for the data, we use computed object. It's predefined for the Vuex. Map getters. Our getter name is crypto values. I'm getting crypto values inside of here. And another like React lifecycle hooks, Vuex also, Vue.js also has lifecycle hooks. And under the documentation, we can see here before created. We are interested with created because,
and in that graph also we can simply explain that our application has life cycles like human beings. So init means that our app get created in the background, but user doesn't see or doesn't know that our application get created. It happens in the background. And after that, the second life cycle happens is created. It's like you are being baby and then toddler and then your first grade. It's similar to that. After the created, we do some actions. For example, before showing the page to the user, we want to get our data. And then when we get the data, we will put in our application, and before user see our application, it will be ready, our data. So to do this actions and operations, we use lifecycle hooks. The same lifecycle hooks applies for the React library too. It's pretty similar also with the naming. And we have before mounted. Mounted means, for example, after we render the page, when users see the screen, if you want to change something or if you want to do an operation, we can do inside of the mounted. Before update or before mount means that when we close the screen, we can do, okay, if user close my tab, close the screen, delete this value or end this function. we can say define different actions for some different reasons.
Before we render the application to the page, we want to show a loading screen and then data. We want to make a fetch request just before we render our application. After the application get mounted to the screen, we can show our data. Let's use that created. It's a function actually as a lifecycle hooks. And then we can say this dot fetch cryptocurrencies.
And if you are also familiar with React, there is one hook called use memorization. Use memorization in general means that if we have some calculation, like for example, big math calculation, it needs different 20 variables, and then the end result is so big, so complicated. When we run this function, we use some computation, we use some energy. Simply means that from our computer. But if we define that operation inside of the computer, and if we run that operation again, Vue.js actually automatically understand that, okay, I ran this before, so I know the answer. I don't need to run this function again. So we will have some memory optimization, computation optimization. It's a great feature. It comes with directly Vue.js. You don't have to install any package. When we declare the compute object here, and you put your operation and calculation inside of it, you can say directly get memorization feature.
Okay, great.
We also declare our fetch cryptocurrencies action inside of our store. And then here, we can simply run this function. When we run this function, we also run our get data function. So we can able to fetch our cryptocurrency values from some database or API endpoint. How we can do that? Created means that before we show the page to the user, run this function, get the data, and then we will make some changes to show the screen.
When we fix our typo here, crypto values, since it's an object, it will be property, crypto values. And when we import also crypto API to get its function, and then save this, and then come back to the app, we can see our fetch data inside of.
How we can see that result? We get our map getters in the computed property called crypto values. So crypto values is basically getter. So it means just I can able to get this data. So we mention with the double curly bracelet crypto values, we can able to show our raw data to the screen.
So we want to do this readable. For that reason, I'm going to create our second component called crypto list.view. This crypto list actually will be responsible for the showing data inside of the screen. And for that, I'm just doing the classic component setup here. It's called crypto list. Okay, great. And then inside here, I will put. We need a table. This. So in the materialize, because we have already defined a table, I will use it, and then just wrap it to the one root div. It's must have. So let's import that to our home component. Import crypto list. Mention crypto list here. We should see table in this.
So at this point, we also came across one of the most important features of the single page applications structure generally. You simply say that, Kaan, we get our data. Why we created another component, show the data? We already have the data. We can just do for loop or map inside of our HTML, and we can put our data. But imagine that we get the cryptocurrency values, and maybe we will create 5 different pages. And for each of the pages, do we need to for loop the same thing, same data, and it repeats the code. It's hard to read, hard to maintain. And the concept called reusable components. So we are going to create, we already created crypto list. So we just pass our data to crypto list component, and that component will take care of the showing the data in the screen, and that's all. In the future, when we make a new page, let's call that page gold, and we will list all of the gold prices for different countries, different time zones. And when we want to render the gold prices, we will use crypto list component. We just pass our gold data like we do for the home component, and then crypto list component, we can call it like listing page to make it more reusable in the future. And then when we pass gold data or bronze data in the future, that component will take care of it. So we avoid the repeating ourselves, and also we will have a big advantage in the future that our code more readable, more tech debt less.
Screen. But for that, I also need to define components here, because we are going to use crypto list component here, and we need to define. So I define it, crypto list, and let's check. Yes, we are seeing in the screen.
We are in the homepage component, but we can able to see the table. How? Because we imported crypto list reusable component inside of our home component, so we can able to see the table in the screen.
We need to actually work on our data to show it like to the screen. We are now going to learn how we can pass props to the between components. It's really similar to React, and we want to name our prop name. So I want to name it as a crypto data. What we want to pass is crypto values here. Inside of the crypto list component, actually, we need to define that we are going to receive props. Here, we say that this component will receive props named crypto data. When we check the home, we define crypto data can be named anything, but the crypto values, since you are getting your getter or your state function component level data, it needs to be same what you name it. But crypto data, this prop name is fully customizable. In the crypto list, we need to actually table price and market cap. Great. We don't use these TRs. We are going to learn other great feature of the Vue.js. There's a predefined mapping function for loop. We are going to receive crypto data, right? Key is important because if this value change, the memorization function, computation behind the scenes, check the ID and only update the required dataset. Key should be unique. And since we are getting the ID from our dataset, I can easily define key as our ID, crypto.id. I also can reach crypto.name.
And this is the feature of the Vue.js that with the curly bracelet, so I can able to reach my data. Like if you ever use or Python or Java, inside of the HTML, when you define the double curly braces, you can get your variable name.
And crypto dot, what we have, price, market cap. Great, let's check. Yes, we see in the screen that we get the data and we in our home component, but we use reusable component structure crypto list to show the data in the screen. I want to add one more feature that I want to show loading spinner. Since we want to show loading screen, I'm going to visit my preloader, materialize. And then there is already defined this spinner I want to use, this blue one. And then here, what we are going to do that there's another predefined Vue.js functionality called VIF. When I want to show this class, this element group, we can use VIF and some statement here. I want to use show loading, but how we can get this show loading? And also in the otherwise, I want to say that my application that v else, if this is not true, and show my table. Means that I get the value from the backend, it's ready to render, and I go back to my module, and here we already set show loading false and state show loading data here. So when we get the data, we set it to false. It means show that doesn't show spinner. I'm going to create a getter. Getter is only for getting a value, show loading, state, and state as show loading. It's that simple. Since we created this getter, I'm going to go back because we are using crypto list inside of the home component. I'm adding another getter called show loadings we just created. I pass it as props show loading. So when I come back to my crypto list, I also had to define as a props that I will get show loading. We define it here, and then it's good. Let's test it. When I refresh, yes, we can see the spinning. I'm just hard to refresh the page. I see the application. Actually, for this part, since we are getting almost done with our time, I want to go over what we did. First of all, we created our main.js, and main.js file create our Vue instance. And this Vue instance target the index.html under the public folder. Since this is a single page application, everything, this home page actually in the screen right now, everything put together here. But Vue.js conditionally show it in the screen. In the main.js file, we say that get the element ID by app, and then render our app component. Router view handles which component should be showing in the screen. Created router. In that router, we said that, okay, we have a component named home, and if the user visit this path, / you should show it. Also, what we did that we created a global store similar to the Redux and MobX. We have getters, actions, mutations. In the Vuex, we must not directly mutate the global state. But we have actions and mutations. When we run an action, for example, this action get the value from the API, but doesn't set the global state crypto data inside of the actions. Instead of that, we have this commit. Commit comes with the Vuex already predefined, and we defined the mutation name. Defined set cryptocurrency values. The first element state, it's predefined argument, and second one is the data, what we want to set. Is mutate the data inside of the mutations. Inside of the components, we can get our data. We have this Vuex and map actions and map getters. It's complete Vuex. So methods, as I already described, that we can create component level functions here. Computed object is that if we have, imagine that you have a big math calculation, and when your app gets rendered in the screen, you have to do that calculation. But if you put that value inside of the computed property object, here it will be memoized, and your computation and memory management will be much better. We define our map getters here because we use 3 dots, because we also maybe want to define another like big math calculation. And then you can define other functions here. We can pass like React or Angular props by creating prop name and then the value. And then other important part is that we need to mention components section object component we use. So it's crypto list. When I go to the crypto list, which is responsible for showing this data in the screen, we need to must tell that we will receive two props called crypto data and show loading. This is another must have. We mentioned two great Vue feature. One of them is V4. V4 is 100% same to the like your basic for loop in JavaScript. We just give the data and just it creates another table body with the data. Like for example, we have 50 now. Vue for us created 50 table body. So another great feature that if you want to do conditional rendering in the screen, like for example, when I for user first open the app, we don't show empty screen. We show loading screen, and then when we get the data, we show our data. How we can achieve this? We use predefined property called if. We give one condition. If show loading is true, show this part of the page. If not, else. You can also define as if, and then here we can do another v as condition. It's up to us, like this. But for our case, one as if condition is enough. Since we are almost done with our time, and if anybody wants to challenge himself, I can share from my GitHub that the advanced version of the crypto tracker. For that version, we have another page called latest listings. We list the cryptocurrencies, and also you can add cryptos to your portfolio. And when you delete it, so you can say a custom message. We have additional 5 functionalities. So if anybody is interested in, just please let me know. I can select the GitHub repo. Thanks for listening and attending. Have a great day.